George Floyd. On May 25, 2020, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, a routine call over a suspected counterfeit $20 turned into a global flashpoint. On a South Minneapolis street, Officer Derek Chauvin pressed his knee into George Floyd's neck as bystanders recorded 9 agonizing minutes that would echo worldwide. Sirens, shouts, and a desperate plea. "I can't breathe." Traffic idled, cell phones rolled. Within hours, the video spread like wildfire, pulling millions into a raw, unfiltered confrontation with police force and accountability. The city braced. Protests from Lake Street to London, law enforcement tactics, training, and union contracts landed under a microscope as Minneapolis became ground zero for a new era of scrutiny. Chauvin was fired, charged, and convicted of murder in 2021. His conviction, rare in cases involving on-duty force, reset expectations for consequences and catalyzed reforms far beyond Minnesota. Breonna Taylor. On March 13, 2020, in Louisville, Kentucky, just after midnight, Louisville officers served a search warrant at Breonna Taylor's apartment. Gunfire erupted. Taylor, a 26-year-old ER tech, was shot and killed, sparking fury over warrant practices, knock, no-knock entries, and accountability. For months, her name appeared on handmade signs, NBA jerseys, and city streets. Questions piled up. The warrant affidavit, the intelligence, the tactics. Why was Breonna Taylor dead in her own home? Say her name became a rallying cry. Louisville moved to restrict no-knock warrants. Legislatures nationwide debated similar changes. The case showed how paperwork and procedure aren't footnotes. They can be life and death. In 2022, the U.S. Justice Department charged 4 current and former LMPD officers over the warrant process. In 2023, DOJ's pattern or practice report blasted systemic violations. The legal reckoning isn't over. Michael Brown. On August 9, 2014, in Ferguson, Missouri, Officer Darren Wilson encounters 18-year-old Michael Brown. Minutes later, Brown is dead in the street. The images, crime scene tape, summer heat, neighbors weeping, etched into America's memory. Protests swept the suburb and then the country. Tear gas, armored vehicles, late-night marches. Ferguson became shorthand for an unresolved national fracture over race and policing. Federal investigators combed through every second, every witness statement. One report dissected the shooting, another exposed unconstitutional practices inside the Ferguson Police Department. The DOJ's dual findings reshaped the conversation, not just one shooting, but a system critique. Ferguson forever changed how cities read their own data, train officers, and face community distrust. By the way, I'm going to be posting a lot more interesting videos on the channel. I'll greatly appreciate it if you could show support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Thank you. Eric Garner. On July 17, 2014, in Staten Island, New York, a sidewalk arrest over alleged loose cigarette sales escalated quickly. An NYPD officer wrapped Eric Garner's neck in a prohibited chokehold. Garner collapsed, repeating words that would haunt America. "I can't breathe." The cell phone video was stark. A swarm of uniforms, a man on the ground, a crowd pleading. The clip ricocheted through newsrooms and living rooms, pushing the nation to ask, what is necessary force? Protests surged over accountability. Federal civil rights charges were weighed, debated, and, years later, declined. The city would still take administrative action and revisit restraint tactics. Garner's death is now a chapter title, one that rewrote policy manuals, inspired body camera pushes, and cemented a 3-word refrain into modern protest language. Tamir Rice. On November 12, 2014, in Cleveland, Ohio, a 12-year-old at a park, a pellet gun without an orange tip. A police cruiser rolls up. Within seconds, shots are fired. Tamir Rice collapses, and time stops on a snowy Cleveland afternoon. The surveillance video is brutally brief. Arrival, shots, aftermath. Dispatch miscommunications about the gun being probably fake would become a central tragic detail. Public outrage spread beyond Ohio. Training on approach, distance, and de-escalation for youth encounters came under intense review. Years later, federal prosecutors declined charges, but the case remains a landmark in conversations about kids, perceived threats, and first contact tactics. Freddie Gray, between the 12th and 19th of April, 2015, in Baltimore, Maryland. A chase, an arrest, and a transport in a police van. By week's end, Freddie Gray was dead from a severed spine. The city erupted. Protests, curfews, and hard reckonings about custodial care. Rough rides, seatbelts, and transport protocols dominated headlines. Baltimore wasn't just facing a case, it was confronting long-running tensions over policing in West Baltimore. Trials came and went with acquittals and dropped charges. The federal review later closed without civil rights prosecutions, but the policy aftershocks endured. Van procedures, supervision standards, and a sharpened focus on what happens after the cuffs go on. Philando Castile. On July 6, 2016, in Falcon Heights, Minnesota, a traffic stop. A calm voice, a license, a disclosure, "I have a firearm." Seconds later, shots pierced the car. Philando Castile's girlfriend live-streamed the aftermath, forcing America to witness, unblinking. The video, steady, stunned, heartbreaking, traveled instantly. Viewers watched a child in the back seat, a partner narrating shock, an officer trembling. Protests demanded accountability and training reform, especially around licensed gun owners who disclose. The courtroom drama that followed would test those expectations. Officer Geronimo Yanez was charged, then acquitted in 2017. Civil settlements followed, but the video still shapes how departments teach threat assessment and communication under stress. Alton Sterling, on July 5, 2016, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a convenience store parking lot, a struggle on the ground, 2 officers, seconds to decide, and Alton Sterling was shot and killed at point-blank range. The footage, graphic, close, and contested, ignited protests across Louisiana and beyond. Community leaders pressed for transparency, training upgrades, and a clear accounting of what happened. Federal officials reviewed every frame. Then the state attorney general weighed in. No criminal charges came, amplifying anger and calls for structural change. Years later, ripple effects continue. From departmental discipline to protest-related settlements, proof that the story didn't end with a press conference. Walter Scott. On April 4, 2015, in North Charleston, South Carolina, a broken taillight stop turned into a foot chase. Walter Scott ran toward an empty lot. Officer Michael Slager fired 8 shots at Scott's back. A bystander's video dismantled the initial narrative in seconds. The clip spread and the city braced. The visual evidence, Scott running, bullets following, cut through the noise and demanded a legal reckoning. Federal prosecutors stepped in. A state trial stalled. But in federal court, the judge called it what it was for sentencing: second-degree murder for guideline purposes. Slager received 20 years. The sentence echoed nationwide. Video can be the difference between questions and convictions. Laquan McDonald. On October 20th, 2014, in Chicago, Illinois. Blue lights, a dark street, a teen walking away with a small knife. Officer Jason Van Dyke arrived and, within seconds, fired 16 rounds. The dashcam video would stay hidden for over a year. When a court forced its release, Chicago exploded. Outrage at the footage, fury at the delay, and demands for a house cleaning inside city leadership and CPD. The trial became a referendum on truth and transparency. Van Dyke faced a rare on-duty murder charge. The verdict: guilty of second-degree murder and 16 counts of aggravated battery. It was historic, and a warning that secrecy multiplies the damage. Rayshard Brooks. Late night at a Wendy's drive-thru. A sleeping man, a breathalyzer, and suddenly, chaos. On June 12, 2020, in Atlanta, Georgia, 27-year-old Rayshard Brooks was fatally shot by Officer Garrett Rolfe outside a Wendy's in southwest Atlanta. A simmering scene turned deadly. Brooks was cooperative, yet when things went south, he wrestled away a taser and began to flee. Rolfe chased after him and fired 3 shots from about 18 feet away. Brooks was hit twice and later died despite surgery. The body cam, bystander, and surveillance footage emerged like cinematic proof, showing a man shot in the back while running away, then kicked as he lay mortally wounded. Parking lot violence like you've never seen, forcing Atlanta to reckon with force, flight, and failure. The fallout was swift. Atlanta's police chief resigned within 24 hours. The Wendy's burned in protest. Officer Rolfe faced felony murder charges, and his partner, Devin Brosnan, was charged too. But in August 2022, prosecutors dropped all charges, citing the complexity and dynamic situation. This became another national flashpoint, highlighting what can happen when split-second decisions collide with systemic tensions. Brooks's name lives on as a catalyst for reform, policy debates, and a cautionary tale of force unchecked. Daunt Wright. On April 11, 2021, in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, during a traffic stop for expired tags, Officer Kimberly Potter drew her gun instead of her taser and shot 20-year-old Daunt Wright in the chest. Wright's girlfriend, injured but alive, captured the moments after the shot. Potter collapsed, saying, "I grabbed the wrong fucking gun." In chaos, Wright crashed. Medics arrived but could not revive him at the scene. The response was immediate. Protests and curfews. Potter and the police chief both resigned. Potter was later convicted of first- and second-degree manslaughter on December 23, 2021, and in February 2022 sentenced to 2 years in prison, a light sentence that sparked protest from Wright's family. The case underscores how a mechanical error, a mistaking of weapons, can cost a life, and how law enforcement practices, especially around traffic enforcement, require reform. In Brooklyn Center, attempts at new policies were even later voted down, showing how far the change debate still stretches today. Stephon Clark. On March 18, 2018, in Sacramento, California, SAC PD officers fatally shot 22-year-old Stephon Clark as he stood backyard to backyard in his grandmother's property. In seconds, officers fired 20 shots, targeting Clark in a flurry. They mistook his cell phone for a weapon. Panicked voices, machines humming. Then, silence. He died minutes later. Unarmed, again. The Sacramento community erupted. Peaceful vigils, lawsuits, and questions about de-escalation training, especially with African American residents. The state attorney general declined charges, but the city settled with Clark's family for $2.8 million, making it one of the costliest settlements in California history. Clark's death became a chapter in the narrative of structural distrust, police fear, tech confusion, and the lethal stakes of snap judgment. It remains a case study in misidentification and community trauma. Botham Jean. On September 6, 2018, in Dallas, Texas, Dallas officer Amber Geiger entered Botham Jean's apartment, shot and killed him, claiming she thought it was her own unit. Jean, seated calmly eating ice cream, was a churchgoer, accounting professional brother who identified himself, "Hey, I'm in here." It's the wrong apartment Geiger fired before realizing her error. Democrats and community leaders watched closely. Geiger was convicted of murder in October 2019 and sentenced to 10 years. In less than a year, she was released in October 2023 through early release protocols. This case unfolded as a tragic collision of ordinary life and deadly error, highlighting the heightened risk when officers don't verify identity or location. Jean's memory became a clarion call for accountability and care. Tatiana Jefferson. On October 12, 2019, Fort Worth officer Aaron Dean shot and killed Tatiana Jefferson in her own home. Within seconds of arrival, Dean drew his weapon and fired through the window. Inside, Jefferson was focused on her 8-year-old nephew. Not a threat, just caught in a terrifying snapshot. The neighborhood lit candles, and protesters demanded to know, how can someone be shot in their own house? Dean was indicted and pleaded guilty to murder in 2021. He received 22 years. Yet, the image of home invaded stays haunting. Jefferson's death poses questions about split-second threat assessments, domestic calls, and what happens when protect and serve crosses into violation, and how proximity doesn't equal danger. Elijah McClain. On August 24, 2019, in Aurora, Colorado, EMS and police responded to a call about a suspicious person. Elijah McClain collapsed afterward and died at age 23. The interaction was calm, almost surreal. McClain, wearing headphones and a ski mask, answered questions. Yet the paramedics, suspecting overdose, injected ketamine. Within 30 minutes, he went into cardiac arrest. Months turned into years before public pressure led to criminal charges in 2021. Aurora settled with the family for $15 million and introduced new protocols for chemical sedation and civilian oversight. McLean's case remains potent, showing how medical assumptions entwined with police intervention can be fatal and how invisibility can cost a life if we don't demand remembrance and reform. Tyre Nichols. On January 7, 2023, Memphis officers stopped Tyre Nichols for alleged reckless driving. By the end, he was in critical condition and died 3 days later. Body cam footage later revealed officers kicking and punching Nichols repeatedly, overwhelmingly, and mercilessly. The violence lasted nearly 3 minutes while other officers watched. There was no justification tone. The Scorpion unit was disbanded. 5 officers were charged with second-degree murder and other crimes. The public, already raw from viewing footage, reacted with horror, sorrow, and urgent calls for transformation. Nichols's short life and brutal death ignited new demands in Memphis and beyond for independent oversight, dashcam policy clarity, and the human face behind reform, dignity and restraint. Amadou Diallo. On February 4, 1999, NYPD officers unloaded 41 rounds at Amadou Diallo, a 22-year-old African immigrant, mistakenly believing his wallet was a gun. Diallo fumbled for what officers thought was a weapon. 3 bullets struck him. He'd thrown his wallet. The spray of bullet holes and confusion defined the scene. The public outcry erupted. Federal investigations followed. Although officers were acquitted on criminal charges, the case spurred renewed calls for racial sensitivity, de-escalation training, and stricter use of force standards. Diallo's killing marked a turning point. His life and the hail of gunfire highlighted how fear, darkness, and misidentification can literally kill, and how policy and empathy must catch up. Sean Bell. On November 25, 2006, in New York City, outside a strip club just before his wedding, Sean Bell and his friends were ambushed by 50 police rounds. 3 were killed, Sean Bell included. Plainclothes officers, undercover, opened fire after suspecting a threat. Bell was unarmed. His body holed with bullets, and 3 of his friends were seriously wounded. It was a firefight that wasn't. No officers were convicted. Civil suits were settled for millions. The case cracked open conversations about departmental culture, undercover ambiguity, and how suspicion and aggression can collide disastrously. Bell's death became shorthand for lost future, a man killed on the brink of marriage, undercutting the idea that weddings are safe zones against state violence. Oscar Grant. On January 1, 2009, in Oakland, California, BART officer Johannes Maserla shot 22-year-old Oscar Grant in the back while he was face down on the platform. What began as a routine train altercation ended with a fatal .50 caliber handgun round into the back of a man obeying police orders. Bystander video captured the blow. The phrase non-lethal felt like a lie. Maserla was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and served 11 months in jail. The video galvanized protests, the film Fruitvale Station, and a surge in bystander documentation as a tool for accountability. Grant's killing remains a landmark, fueling awareness that justice can hinge on video, memory, and refusing to let the world unsee what happened. If you enjoyed this video, I'm going to be posting a lot more interesting videos on the channel. I'd greatly appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. Thank you very much.